Hey, I'm Mohammed Fairouz and I write music. The University of Kansas has one of the oldest and most storied wind ensembles in the country, along with a number of different places, of course, North Texas, Eastman, and um, I think they are celebrating their 125th year as a wind ensemble. They've commissioned a number of important works over the years, and one of the key funders for the School of Music is a dear friend of mine who asked me to identify the group that I'd like to work with, and I immediately sort of gravitated towards the wind ensemble for a number of different reasons. Primarily because they are the flagship ensemble of the school.
Why did you feel that the wind ensemble would be good for this work?
Well, I've always wanted to compose a large-scale piece for the wind ensemble because I feel like the wind ensemble is a medium that has very limited, really deep, extensive repertoire that actually explores what the medium can do. So it's just not. I mean, the first reaction that the director of the wind ensemble has had to my piece when I was it's a fourth symphony, it's 45 minutes long and all of that stuff, was, oh, this is just not something we generally do. You know, there's 10-minute pieces, there's nice pieces by Copland, there are all those pieces. So I felt the need to sort of expand the repertoire of the wind ensemble. And there have been extensive pieces like, of course, John Corigliano's Circus Maximus, large-scale wind symphonies that have been written by colleagues and friends for the wind ensemble, but nothing really exploring this topic and something of this sort of depth. And I think it's a wonderful medium to explore this topic because you have every instrument in the wind ensemble has to be activated by human breath, and it's a symbol of hope when you're exploring the aftermath of a great catastrophe to explore it in a way using the human breath, and because to breathe is to be still alive and to still be aware of being alive. So I would say that it's unlike. It was an unlikely match because I'm primarily known for my orchestral music and my vocal music, but I took to the medium very quickly.
And you worked with Art Spiegelman and came up with this idea. What called out to you from his work, and what did you want to represent from that comic?
Well, Art Spiegelman and I are sort of like kindred spirits. I mean, he's a remarkable comic book artist. They call him a graphic novelist, and he hates that. I mean, he said, I write comics. So, and I think that that's great. He also has this way of expressing very deep concepts through this, medium of the comic book. So I think like that has a nice connotation to the wind ensemble because here you're writing a really deep work. It's not a Sousa march. It's not, like occasional music. It's not music that's just normal music for wind ensemble, which is sort of like flashy, quick music or ceremonial music or music for graduation, music for this, music for that. It's music that actually explores a theme. And I think when Art said that I'm going to write a comic book about the Holocaust, and he did Mouse, people reacted in that way. Oh my God, that's a really profound theme, and how could you do it in a comic book? And he did it, and he pulled it off really well. It's actually a really terrifying comic book. So I was drawn to In the Shadow of No Towers after being introduced to Art through, like most people, through Mouse. As a New Yorker, exploring the aftermath of 9/11 and the complex ways that we've reacted to the tragedy has been something I've wanted to write about for a really long time. But it's also something that I did not want to write a piece that memorialized the event. I didn't necessarily want to write a memorial for the victims because I wanted to write a piece, because that's been done. I wanted to write a piece that explored the aftermath of the event. And I also wanted to write a piece that explored things in a sort of through the lens of the comic book, which in itself is two steps removed, because it's so easy to do emotional exploitation almost, like write a really sentimental piece about such an emotional topic with so much baggage, and it means so much to so many people, and that for me seems cheap. So I wanted to do something that I felt was a real commentary on the aftermath and cultural criticism, and actually, something that was critical in a constructive way of the way that we've responded to the aftermath.
And I heard you comment on it as an elegy for your city. What exactly does that phrase mean to you?
Well, the elegy for my city is just a small part of it. It's part of the Anniversaries movement, which is the final movement of In the Shadow of No Towers. It's a symphony in 4 movements, so it actually has a really classical structure, classical architecture to it. And Anniversaries is a sort of bolero-like movement that starts very quietly and builds up and builds up and builds up. And every anniversary, the towers become larger and larger. They become larger than life. We lose track of the realities of life and death on that day, and it becomes more something that it becomes more an issue of commemorations and anniversaries and this, that, and next thing. So Anniversaries, in a sense, is the only place in the piece where those elegies are appropriate, because it's it's in a way a commentary on the way that we've memorialized the event. So it's sort of like meta memory, that's really what that phrase "elegy for my city" means.
And what emotions did you want to pull out of the piece and convey to the audience, kind of specifically in the movements? Like, was there hope? Was there sadness? Is there kind of does it appeal to the people who lost someone as well as someone who just sat and watched 9/11 on TV?
Well, I think that what's really interesting about 9/11 when it comes to New York and to New Yorkers is that pretty much everyone knows someone who was affected by 2nd degree or 3rd degree. Someone who knows someone who lost someone, or who was affected, or who was injured, or whatever. So it's not hard. I believe that music needs to be communicative, and I believe that music needs to express something, and it needs to do that very clearly, and it needs to do that in a lucid way. And just because music is deep and about deep topics or deeply emotional or whatever, doesn't necessarily, that's not an excuse to make it obtuse and uncommunicative to an audience. So yeah, I feel like people who, the average person, whatever, the non-specialist, the people that I write my music for, that I live in the world with, should understand what I do. And I think that the important things in the piece are so clear. That's one of the things about In the Shadow of No Towers, is that it's a symphony that is so clear that you can hear everything that's happening, and it's very hard to mistake what's going on. So yes, I feel everyone would get this. I don't know that I was necessarily planning to elicit emotions. That's not the way I write music. I write music to convey something, to tell a story. I don't write music with the intention of yanking emotions out of people. I guess I'm just not a romantic in that way.
And how was it to work with the students at Kansas and get to see them play your work and hear it for the first time? What is that experience like?
Well, I work with a lot of professional orchestras all the time, and I work with opera companies and things like that. And professionals, are sort of they're hired help almost, and sometimes they act like that, and sometimes they don't. Students really treat it as a rare opportunity to work with a noted composer, and I think that what ends up happening is they put 110% into the work, and you find that when you work with student ensembles. I'm working with the new Juilliard ensemble on this new commission for their 20th anniversary at Juilliard. And you see that in the students at Juilliard too. There's this pre-orchestral, pre-jadedness, and it's really exciting to get your hands on it. Now, having said that, you know, there are a lot of great orchestral players that do not fit that model, and, you know, are wonderful and, you know, really, really enthusiastic to receive a new work. And so it doesn't fit in necessarily, but in general, young people tend to be much more engaged in bringing the new work to life. They feel like they own it, you know? They don't just feel like it's something that's been commissioned for them by an organization like an orchestra. It's something that they own, and it's something that they really feel like they're being given something that they want to take with them. So there's a wonderful amount of talent, I think, all over the country and all over the world, and young people are more and more. I mean, these are the people that are going to occupy the positions in all the great orchestras too. So it's great to see that positive attitude in the younger players. Mm-hmm. I think it's also cool for them to work with a composer that's more or less young, you know, of their own generation. It's not like this 60-year-old person coming in and sort of, you know, but no, it's not like that. It's more like there is a dialogue, there is a conversation happening between me and the band.
And is the comic going to be displayed at all at the premiere?
Yeah, well, you know, this is only, it's not the whole comic book. These are just details from the comic book. They're just panels. In fact, Art Spiegelman told me that perhaps you should call this piece Panels from In the Shadow of No Towers. I'm not, panels being things that fall off buildings as well as things that, you know, are represented in comics. I'm not a big fan of long titles for pieces of music, and In the Shadow of No Towers is already a long title, so I just kept it as In the Shadow of No Towers. But I thought that was a cool idea. But the panels will be displayed in the Carnegie Hall program.
And when you are writing a work like this, do you have this idea in your head that kind of festers? Are you inspired by actually going to a physical location to write the music? Where does that come from?
Well, I think you have to have some connection to it. I think it would be really difficult to imagine, you know, like Beethoven writing the Pastoral Symphony if he had never been in nature, right? That would be weird. And so that's what makes certain works of art really strange to me, and really, in some ways, really hilarious to us now. Like, for example, like you see all the Orientalists writing about Scheherazade, Rimsky-Korsakov is writing about Scheherazade. It's like, okay, yeah, whatever. And but you know, they're nice pieces, but they're obviously completely disconnected from the reality of that part of the world. So yes, you know, I did take my trips downtown, and I did, you know, walk down there, and I did look around, and you know, I've been seeing for the better part of 10 years what's been happening, not only here but in the rest of the world, and it's been something that we've been able to experience. So, you know, the only the new normal is the very literal representation of the ABA panel in which the events unfold. The rest of the piece is really about the aftermath, and it's about what happens afterwards. And it brings us, I think, to the present day.